Hi guys, Craig here at Stumpy Grump Scale Speed Shop. Today's video is going to be a little bit different than my other ones. I am going to take this opportunity to talk about a subject that can kind of get a little volatile with people in the hobby for whatever reason, and that is primers. Now, this is all just my opinion, and I'm going to try to keep this fairly short if I can. But we're going to touch on the primer subject here. I'm going to start with a couple of questions. The first one is, do I have to use them? Nope. Don't have to use primers if you don't want to. This is your hobby. It's for your enjoyment. And if you don't want to use primer, don't use primer. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. I will say, especially on like your testers and your Tamiya paints and Rust-Oleum and even Krylon, the testers, especially the Extreme Lacquer and the Tamiyas, you really don't need to so much as they're made to cover over plastic. The second one is, should I use them? My opinion, for a number of reasons, is yes, I would recommend using primers. I use primers on every single one of my builds. If you go back, you've seen my work. I'm not saying I'm the best. I'm above average, I guess. But I use primers on every single build. That's not going to change. For a number of reasons. The first one is, yes, it does help with paint adhesion, in my opinion, again. Especially with the water-based paints that I mostly use, which is Createx and the craft paints. This is what I mostly use. Yes, in the summertime I'll dabble in spray cans still, but mostly I'm going to use craft paints and the Createx here. And primers are almost a must. You can try it without it, but I don't think you're going to get too far. So that's the first one. The second one is they highlight any imperfections or mold lines, sink marks, scratches, anything like that that you might not notice without primer, especially on white plastic. It's hard to see this stuff on white plastic. Let's be honest. You sand, if you want to go that far, you sand your mold lines and all that stuff on your body, and then you go to spray the paint and you think, oh, or you see, oh man, there's still a mold line there. I didn't get the whole thing. Could have solved that problem with the primer, and spray the primer on it. Different color primer than the plastic, obviously, and that'll highlight it. Then you'll see if you. Some guys do it before they even sand. They'll take the body and they'll put primer on it, then they'll sand the mold lines. I sand the mold lines first, then I put primer on. And if you're doing body work, it's really, really useful if you're using putties and stuff, to make sure you got everything sanded smooth. It may feel smooth, it may look smooth, but when you spray the paint on, yeah, it's, there's the imperfections. Primer will help you that, and it'll solve all sorts of heartache. Just my opinion. Once again, you'll hear me say that way too many times, but that is what it is. This is just my opinion. I'm just trying to help you guys out there that, may be on the fence about it. Maybe I should use primer. I'll have a lot of guys probably comment, I've never used primer in my life on a mount kit, and I never will, and I do. Good for you. I'm glad, actually. I'm glad you have good results without using primer. But I'm just recommending it based on my opinion here. So let's go into the kinds of primer that are out there that you can use. And I'll probably switch the camera around so you guys aren't sitting here looking at my ugly face for the whole video. Most of these I don't really have examples of, cans of, or anything like that. So I'll just put pictures up as I'm talking about them. But we'll start with the budget spray cans, what I call budget spray cans, which is going to be your Krylon, your Rust-Oleums, things like Bright Touch and Touch and Tone. Okay, those are all viable options for primers, in my opinion, in a budget sense. $5 or $6 a can. Some of them are even a little bit cheaper than that. The Bright Touch and Touch and Tone are maybe $3 or $4. 10 or 12 ounce can. You should probably get, I don't know, 3 to 4 total kits, spraying all the parts and the body with it if you're careful with it. So you should probably get 3 to 4 kits out of it. They're big cans. Let me turn the camera on so you can see the stuff now. So here's the Touch and Tone, and the Rust-Oleum is actually not primer. It's a Satin Canyon Black paint and primer. I don't actually have a can of Rust-Oleum primer. I thought I did. But the Touch and Tone, this is the cheaper stuff. It's okay to use. It's got these kind of spray nozzles on it. They spray heavy. They spray fast. And with the big can, I don't have the biggest hands. It's hard to hold on to and spray. So you don't get the control that you would get in a smaller can. You know, the smaller cans of primers of the hobby brands. But they work good. Honestly, they work good. I've used them actually quite a bit in the summertime to save a little bit before I really was buying too much of what I use now on a regular basis. We'll get to that toward the end of the video. These can be decanted and kept in like a jar for airbrushing, and you should easily get double the amount of kits out of that. At least probably 8 to 12 kits out of a can of this stuff if you airbrush it. Just my guess. So if you want to go that way, you can go that way. I have not tried the Krylon though. I will say that I have not tried Krylon, but my understanding is that it's pretty much the same stuff as this Rust-Oleum. It's decent. You see the nozzle on this one. You know, just clean. You got to clean the stuff out. I really don't, but you got to clean the stuff off when you're done with it. Tip it upside down and spray it out. Use some lacquer thinner and wipe off the nozzle. But these can be sanded smooth after probably a day because they dry fast. They're solvent based, so they're not going to react as much to the water when you wet sand it, or you can dry sand it, whichever one you want to do. Just be careful with this stuff. When you spray it, get used to it. It does spray fast and heavy, but you can adjust with your trigger finger here. You can adjust how much you spray. Just practice spraying lighter coats, lighter mist coats to avoid any heavy spots. Okay? So, very viable option on the budget as far as I'm concerned. Up next is the Automotive primers. This is Rust-Oleum sandable primer. I'll take the cap off. You see the same kind of spray nozzle as regular Rust-Oleum paint. Maybe I didn't give this a good shake, or a good, well, I shook it good, but a good chance. It didn't seem to work for me, but I think what happened was I used it on my Galaxy trailer because it's just a big slab sides, and I didn't want to waste a bunch of Styrene on it, so I just bought a can of this. I did not wash the parts. Shame on me before I did that, and it didn't seem to adhere too good. But I sprayed a second coat on it. It was really nice. I sanded it. It's sandable. Really did good. The other one is the Duplicolor sandable primer. I've never used it before, but my understanding is that it's very, very good. A lot of guys will swear by it for filling in, especially the filler primer. It's supposed to fill in little scratches and stuff like that, and then you can sand it instead. I'm unfamiliar with it, but a lot of guys have good luck with it. So that's those. Okay, now we'll go into what I call hobby spray can primers. Here's some Model Master testers, same stuff. This is enamel gray primer. I don't really use the enamel too much. First couple of builds I did, I used the enamel paint, so I use the enamel primer. Sprays real good. Enamel takes a little bit longer to dry. Sprays real good, lays down real good, real smooth. I don't even think I sanded it before I applied the paint, but you can. Just make sure it's dry. The white primer here is a custom lacquer system from Model Master. There's also Testors white and gray primers. These dry faster. You can wet sand them sooner. They also spray very well. They go on smooth. You might not even have to sand, but you can. Really, really good stuff, but the smaller cans, they don't last as long. 3 ounces, maybe you can get a couple of cars out of each can. So it tends to get a little bit more expensive. Now, pardon all the paint over this one. This is Tamiya Fine Surface Primer. These are, what, I'm going to say 6-ounce cans. And this is good stuff. You see the nozzles on them. Tamiya makes great paints and primers. This is a little more expensive, more than double the price of this, even double the amount, but it's very good. Sprays very fine, very smooth, and can be wet sanded very well. Mr. Hobby Surfacer is the same, almost the same as this, I want to say. I'm not familiar with it. Great stuff too. I've heard a lot of great stuff about it. So good primers here with the Model Master and the Testors, whether it be enamel or lacquer. Better stuff, probably the best stuff you're going to use from a spray can is going to be your Tamiya Fine Surfacer and the Mr. Hobby. That brings me to the final part of the kinds of primers to use is water-based. Now, there's Viejo, there's Mission, and there's what I use, which is Stynorez, which I was turned to when I first started getting into airbrushing these water-based primers. Viejo and Mission at the time, I was told were not quite as good. And easy to be because this stuff is the best as far as I'm concerned. But Viejo and Mission, from what I understand, have upped their game, and even though I'm unfamiliar with them, some trusted sources that I watch their videos on, Barbatos Rex mainly, are impressed with their results anymore. They can be wet sanded after 3 days minimum curing, or they can be dry sanded like later on that day or the next day. I've done that before. I've dry sanded these a little bit, and that works too over wet sanding if there's just a few little flaws. This stuff sprays on very smoothly, and most of the time you might not even need to sand it. A lot of times I don't. They're ready to spray right out of the bottle. Just bottle right into the airbrush and spray it. No, don't have to thin it or anything like that. What I do though, let me grab it up here, is what I've learned to do is I have glycerin. This is a very slippery stuff. Great stuff. Createx makes a retarder for their paint. You can use that. You can use any kind of, any brand, Mission, Viejo, they all have retarders for their paints. You can use it in their primers. I drop, this is a 4-ounce bottle. I drop 1 drop per ounce into these bottles when I get them. So that's 4 drops. They also make a 2-ounce. So that would be 2 drops, and you can get 8, 16 ounces. So 1 drop per ounce. And that really helps the flow. And it helps prevent against the tip of your airbrush drying. Because, you don't want the tip of that drying. And it keeps them from kind of clumping up in here too. It really helps in a lot of ways. So that's what I do with those. Like I said, it's my go-to, right out of the bottle into the cup. 3 days drying time, curing time before you wet sand it, but you can dry sand it almost immediately. As soon as it's dry, really, 15 or 20 minutes, you can dry sand it, smooth it out, spray another coat on it or whatnot if you get a clump or a dust, hair, whatever in it, because it happens. We have dogs. You get dog hair in there once in a while. Your house is dusty, no matter how much you clean it, get a clump of dust in there. So that's that. That's my opinion and so-called expertise on primers, if you want to call it that. Like I said, I'm going to have people comment, I've never used primer in my life, it's a waste of time and money. Make that decision on your own, okay? Don't take anybody's word for it. Don't take my word for it. Try it. See if it does any good for you, any of these primers. See if they do any good for you, if you like them. It's just an extra step, okay? I'm in the camp of better safe than sorry. I'd rather take the extra step, a little bit of extra cost, not that much, when you consider the cost of a kit and some of the paint sometimes, to spray the primer on there for better adhesion and just, you know, before you spray your paint on there and you have it react to the plastic, whatever, try it. See if it works for you. But like I said, do your own research. This is just my opinion and a basic guide for you, hopefully. You want more information, let me tell you a guy to go to as far as I'm concerned. Tons of videos on primers, paints, any kind, water-based, ready to spray, lacquer airbrush paint, anything and everything. Hundreds of videos on paints and primers of all kinds. Barbados Rex. And I'll put it up here on the screen for you. And I'll put it in the link onto his YouTube channel in the description. Invaluable, at least for me, absolutely invaluable. But I'll end it there. Thanks for watching Stumpy Grump Scale Speed Shop. I hope this helped somebody and I didn't bore everybody to death. And I'll catch you next time.